I genuinely love cooking. I've done it ever since I can remember with my mom and now in my own home. As our family grew and I had more responsibilities, constantly cooking under pressure due to poor planning and preparation nearly robbed me of that love. Thanks to ingredient prep day and a few other systems I've implemented in my kitchen, I'm slowly finding it again. Here are the 5 things that I do to make sure that I make the most out of my ingredient prep day. I find that the mental load of planning what to do takes up way more energy for me than actually doing the thing. So it's so important for me to have that done ahead of time, because the day of is usually some interruptions, and if I'm trying to think of what to do at the same time as I'm interacting with my kids and handling other things, it'll just be pure chaos. But at least if I have what I need to get done planned ahead of time, I can actually dedicate my mental energy to other things. I find that it's very easy for me to get distracted with what to do, so the best way for me to figure out what is most important to get done is to try and figure out the pain points that I have in my day, the basics that I need and use on a regular basis in most of my meals. Most of it is repetitive, which is great because it means I don't have to reinvent the wheel every single week. All I have to do is just find what works and rinse and repeat. I have a master list on my fridge of things that I can pull ideas off of, things that I use regularly in my kitchen, things that I need to keep in rotation so that I have a well-stocked freezer and pantry of ingredients. Before I had a master list, I found that it was very time consuming for me to make a to-do list, and the more I thought about it, I'm just making the same lists over and over a period of a few weeks. So why not just have one list that contains 99% of the ingredients that I use on a regular basis anyway, and just have it on my fridge so that I can refer to it easily. One thing that I prep on a weekly basis is my salads. I love eating salads, but I don't love having to chop salads every single day, and chopping lettuce ahead of time was not giving me consistently good results. So 3 months ago, I switched over to using cabbage as my base, and it's been amazing. Here are my reasons why. Number 1, it preserves its crunch and color way longer, which means I can prep a lot at once. And nutritionally, it's way better than lettuce. It's extremely cost effective. I don't need to wash it. I just remove the outer layers and start chopping. And if I layer the other salad veggies on top of the cabbage, I found that it created a drainage system for all their juices and it prevented them from getting soggy. The only thing which took some getting used to was the texture, but I found that if I chop it very, very thin or use a cabbage shredder, the texture is actually really nice. The next thing I do is I list them based off of priority so that I'm not wasting my time with lower reward things. For example, if I were to prep onion as the first thing and if I wasn't able to get to anything else on my list, that's probably one of the most important things that I use in my kitchen for most meals that I make. So this is why it's important for me to do things based off of priority. When I'm doing things in the kitchen, usually I don't get to everything on my list, which is fine as long as I did the most important things on my list. For example, if I wanted to prep minced garlic for the freezer or make cookie dough balls for the freezer as well, I know which thing I'm gonna do first, and it's not the cookie dough balls. The next important thing to remember is that an ingredient prep day is not a cooking day, which means it's important to have food like leftovers or super low prep easy meals or freezer meals to pull from, so that when you're spending all your time in the kitchen prepping ingredients and then lunchtime rolls around or dinner rolls around and then you have a bunch of ingredients to work with but nothing is actually prepped and everybody's hungry, it's very nice to have food that's already prepped and all you have to do is just reheat and eat it. In my previous video, I mentioned that I make my grocery list throughout the week. What I didn't mention is the bulk of that happens actually on ingredient prep day, because on ingredient prep day, I'm noticing things that are empty, things that are running low. So as I'm going through my day and prepping ingredients, I'm also making my grocery list so that when the time comes that I need to make the grocery list, pretty much most of it is done. This next tip, I think it's specific to parents with really young children, is you do what you can in pockets of time throughout the day. It's very difficult to find an uninterrupted 3 to 4 hours where you're doing everything all at once, and that sounds kind of exhausting anyway, so why would I want to do that? Most of my work happens in little pockets of time throughout the day, and that's okay. I used to feel frustrated that I wasn't able to just do this big consecutive food prep session, but now once I understood the power of just doing what you can in the time that you you have it and just making the most of that. I finally stopped telling myself that I couldn't do it and started figuring out ways to make do with the time that I had and make the most of it. One important thing is to avoid making everything every single week. And the way I do that is by doing big batches of things at a time so that it can last me a few weeks, months, depending on the ingredient. I don't know about you, but sometimes I find that the line can get blurry as to what is considered ingredient prep versus food prep. So I find that a good rule of thumb for me is asking myself, does this require the stove? If not, then yes, it's ingredient prep. But if it does require the stove, then I have to ask myself, is this a key ingredient in other recipes? For example, I like to make Ethiopian spiced ghee, or shish in my language, and that requires turning on the stove because you're melting a lot of butter, you're simmering it, seasoning it, and whatnot. It is a bit time consuming to do on regular food prep days. It is an ingredient in a lot of the other dishes that I make, therefore I would consider that ingredient prep. Another example would be chicken broth, and I use that in a lot of other recipes, so that would be considered ingredient prep. Implementing an ingredient prep day has single-handedly changed the way my kitchen works. No more starting everything from scratch whenever I'm trying to cook something. Once it clicked in my head that the bulk time of cooking is actually taken up by washing, peeling, and chopping meat and produce, then I realized that if I have that done ahead of time, cooking is just basically throwing ingredients together. That's it. I'm in a new stage of life and I need new systems for my kitchen. So now I want to find the pain points in my daily kitchen rhythm and improve them so that I am one step closer to a peaceful home.